Once upon a time, long, long ago, so long ago that no one's quite sure if it really happened. A time where things didn't change, where things went on. A time when the veil between the worlds was thin and spirits walked the earth. And when things happened, when things went wrong, and people were punished in a way they're not punished now, when the spirits sought to regulate us and teach us how to behave. There was a girl in the village, a very, very pretty girl. And you might think, or you might have been told, that in olden days, in the villages, what men looked for in a girl was not beauty, but someone who was strong, who would work hard in the gardens with broad childbearing hips, and would be a proper partner for them. This may be so, but do not think that men did not have an eye for beauty and an eye for curves. And this girl, though she was without doubt the laziest girl in the village, who did little to help in the garden, little to help in the house, little to help with her siblings, little to help her parents, was always preening herself and making herself look beautiful and pretty, and all the boys were paying court to her. And she did not want to have the sort of life she saw her mother have. She didn't want to be a drudge. She wanted to enjoy herself. So she decided that she must have a husband. And even though perhaps people thinking with their brains would not have married her, men sometimes think with another part of their anatomy. And there was one man, a strong man, a brave man, a man who liked to travel and to hunt and would bring back meat and bring back goods. And she thought he would provide for her better than anyone else, and that with him as her husband, she wouldn't have to work very hard. So she chose him. She'd been very careful up to that point to keep her legs crossed. She knew what was her most valuable commodity, and she was going to get a good price. She married him, and as everyone had told him, she proved to be a very bad wife. She did not look after their gardens. What he didn't know was that not only was she a bad and a lazy wife, but she was an unfaithful wife. And when he was off on his hunting, what she was doing while he was away was she was on her back, on their mat in their bed, with one or other of her admirers crawling through. Now he beat her and criticized her and shouted at her, but she was very pretty and she had her ways of pleasing him. He wasn't really sure what to do. Well, they had some children and she neglected them and passed them out to his family and to her family. But the spirits were not happy. And to begin with, it started as a little itch that when she was lying on her back and someone was on top of her who was not her husband, she would feel herself itching beneath her shoulder blades, and she'd have to scratch and scratch, and it would kind of put her off. And then she'd get the guy to scratch. And then that wasn't quite so enjoyable, but, you know, a small price to pay. But then the itching got worse. And the itching also started whenever she saw another man, or whenever she thought about another man, until the other men, they went off. They didn't want to go and scratch her back. And when her husband came back, all she wanted him to do was scratch him, and scratch was to scratch her, and to scratch her back, to scratch her back. And she was doing nothing, and he was furious. But she was just itching. She couldn't stay still in bed. She couldn't stay still all the time. She was scratching, and it didn't matter how much he beat her or how much he shouted at her or how much he told her to stop. She would just be scratching and scratching and rubbing herself against every surface that she could. And he was quite fed up. And one day he noticed that the banana tree outside their house was all rubbed smooth, because she was obviously all the time scratching and rubbing her back. So he got some bamboo and sliced it very, very thin, just like little knives, and he put it in the banana tree so he could see what would happen. Or what it was making her itch. She came out, and she smiled to begin with, and she started to scratch and feel really flat. Oh, but obviously the bamboo blades were giving her some relief, because she continued, even though she could see the blood rolling down. Then he got forward. She leaned up, and he looked into the cuts. He saw these little creatures with thick legs crawling out from under her skin. As he looked, more and more and more of them came out, about this size and sort of, and they came out, and he swatted some, and they bled, and others scuttled off and went off into the world. And this is how the bed bugs came. And the bed bugs came to punish people who spend too long in bed and don't work hard and don't clean their houses.